there's a lot of uncertainty out there in the markets around, I guess, economic uncertainty with, different countries having different um, interest rate agendas. Particularly America, there was talk about installing a particular person into a position with the Reserve Bank there to maybe have a bias on the downside, and whether or not that's true or not remains to be seen. But then also, I guess geopolitically, there's lots of things happening in the world, whether it's wars, Russia, Ukraine, Israel, Gaza. You've also, had a lot of rumblings in recent times around, China, Taiwan, that kind of stuff. And then even big investors out there like Ray Dalio talking about, China potentially becoming the new empire, so to speak, rather than the US. Yeah, happy to hear your thoughts around all of those things and how they affect more, globally.
Look, that's fascinating. All those factors are constantly, topical in the news and discussed. Look, in short, all these matter a lot to Australia, given Australia is a small, open, commodity heavy economy, and that makes us highly exposed to the global forces and what's going on around the world, even if the domestic conditions seem stable. What we do need is to separate the cyclical noise and the shorter term issues from factors that are going to lead to structural shift, and then assess Australia's specific exposure to that shift. Cyclical risks means things like we mentioned, geopolitical issues, monetary policy in the US, financial market volatility. These factors tend to have a short-term impact on our economy and our market. So that, or you can put that in the sort of the short-term noise bucket, whereas the longer-term structural issues can have a far greater impact on our economy. And some of these include things like deglobalization, and all the trade issues that we've been witnessing over the last couple of years, the China's structural slowdown, the energy transition that we're going through, and sort of structurally higher inflation and interest rates. These are the factors that have a long-lasting impact on our economy and our markets. For example, deglobalization and trade wars could lead to supply chains becoming less efficient, which leads to higher costs, and that which will feed into higher structural inflation, which is going to impact us, given that potentially that's going to lead to higher prices, and then we get caught in between issues that are happening between the US and China as well. On the China front, for example, China is perhaps the single biggest risk factor for us, given that China is our largest customer. And they've been going through their own transition. This is something that needs to be managed from an investment perspective, particularly as China is transitioning away from an investment and export-led manufacturing model, which the last 2 or 3 decades, they've been going through that phase, becoming the factory of the world per se. And now they're transitioning to a more internal consumption-driven economy to combat the issues that they're going through in their property space. There's overcapacity now after years of additional investment. There's debt issues, and they've got an aging population as well. So all these factors will end up having a structural long-term impact on our economy in the long term. Look, it's very difficult to forecast the outcomes. We know that these structural shifts take time to play out, and they will result in bouts of volatility. They're likely to reshape Australia's growth model in the future, which could potentially change the earnings composition for our market. We know the iron ore is a large part of our market, and if China's demand for iron ore reduces, that's going to have an impact on the profitability of our market as a whole. Our fiscal policy, what the RBA does, our housing market dynamics, and investment flows into the country. So there are a lot of factors at play. So it's important just to remove the noise from the short-term factors, focus on the long-term, and make this sustainable investment decisions based on how those longer-term themes play out.